While I was out filming at Blitz Paintball a couple weeks ago, Russell, Caleb, and I needed a Macroline for a Havoc launcher, and it just so happens that my E-Tech 4 is one of the markers that still features a Macroline. You may not have a Macroline on your specific marker. It's becoming less in vogue these days in paintball, but the vast majority of paintball markers that have been made in the last decade do feature a Macroline from the ASA to the HPR, and this little bad boy right here is your Macroline. These two little guys right here are macro fittings. I was always under the impression that you needed some kind of tool in order to remove a Macroline from a macro fitting, but it turns out you can just do it on the field and swap out Macrolines if you happen to damage it somehow. And in order to do that, you grab a hold of the Macroline collar, which is this little sort of mobile piece right here on both ends, and pull it down as you pull the Macroline out, and there you go. It is now separated from your marker. You'll notice that it is still wiggly, and as you pull on it without pushing it back, it is going to lock into place and make it impossible to remove your Macroline. So you do have to add force onto the collar in the opposite direction of the Macroline in order to release it. So after we used this Macroline on a Havoc launcher for a little while, it was time to put it back on my marker. So I just stuck it back into place, and it's as easy as just sticking it back into where it came from. But when I went to gas it up, started doing things very similar to that. Not quite that drastic, but it was leaking air. So luckily I had Russell on hand in order to teach me how to put a Macroline back into a macro fitting properly. So he just grabbed it and just wedged it in there and just gave it a little bit of a clamp down like that. And as you can hear, it's still leaking ever so slightly, and there is a fix for this. You'll find that when you're out on the field that sometimes when you gas up your marker between games, you'll be leaking a little air out of your Macroline. Very easy, quick fix. Just grab it and wedge it a little bit more. If that's not quite working, grab a hold of this part and turn it and wedge it into place. Use some He-Man strength there. And there you go. Completely silent. Very easy to do. Of course, if you're at home and you're teching your gun and you can add a little lube to the macro fittings or whatever and get it absolutely 100% airtight, that's great. When you're out on the field, just a quick little force on it just to put it back where it belongs will get you back up and running. So if you're having problems with your Macroline leaking, rather than jumping to the conclusion and sending it all the way to some pro shop elsewhere and paying shipping and handling and having someone tech your gun, when it's just coming out of your Macroline, you can just fix it yourself. Real easy to do. Again, grab a hold, stick it into place, you're set to go. Now I have a perfectly silent gun, absolutely ready to go out and play some paintball. So I'm AJ from Hustle Paintball. This has been your Barrel Break.